The sleek diplomatic vessel handshake decelerated as it approached the massive Concorde station hanging in space like an elaborate crystalline snowflake. Inside the ship's ready room, Ambassador Elena Chen straightened her collar for the 5th time, inhaling deeply to calm her nerves. "Humanity's first extraterrestrial diplomatic mission," she murmured. "No pressure." Captain Miguel Ortiz chuckled beside her. "Just another day representing 8 billion humans to 17 alien species who didn't know we existed until 6 months ago." The comm system chimed. "Ambassador, we're receiving docking instructions." Chen nodded to her team of 6, the carefully selected face of humanity. Dr. Eliza Okafor, Sinobiologist. Commander Samir Patel, Military Liaison. Dr. Jun Yoshida, Linguistics Expert. Engineer James Rodriguez, Technical Advisor. Kathleen Moore, Cultural Attaché. And Marcus Wong, Chief Sinoanthropologist. Each wore the same navy blue uniform with Earth's new interstellar insignia, an olive branch overlaid on a field of stars. "Remember," Chen said, "we represent not just nations or factions, but our entire species. Let's make history, the good kind." The handshake docked with barely a shudder, a testament to Ortiz's piloting skills. As the airlock cycled, Chen felt her pulse quicken. The door slid open to reveal 3 alien representatives. The tallest resembled a willowy praying mantis with iridescent blue exoskeleton and 4 delicate arms. To its left stood a stocky, fur-covered being with 6 eyes arranged in a circle around what appeared to be a central breathing apparatus. The third alien was humanoid, but with gray-green skin and tentacle-like appendages flowing from its head. The mantis-like being stepped forward. "I am First Greeter Xaltiva of the Moriki," it said through a floating translator orb. "We welcome humans to Concorde Station." Chen bowed slightly. "On behalf of Earth, we are honored to." A piercing alarm cut her off. Red lights pulsed along the corridor as more aliens rushed forward, brandishing slender devices. The welcoming party's demeanor shifted instantly from cordial to wary. "What's happening?" Chen asked, hands raised in what she hoped was a universal gesture of non-aggression. The furry 6-eyed alien consulted a holographic display. "Your shuttle contains multiple weapon systems." Commander Patel stepped forward. "There must be a mistake." "We're unarmed," as agreed. Xaltiva's compound eyes narrowed. "Explain these energy emitters." A hologram displayed the handshake's standard equipment. Rodriguez squinted at the image. They're just maintenance lasers for emergency repairs." "And these chemical compounds?" the tentacle-headed alien demanded. Dr. Okafor leaned in. "Standard cleaning supplies for the sanitation system. The pressurized canisters. Fire suppression," Captain Ortiz answered, bewilderment evident in his voice. The situation deteriorated as more items were flagged. Kitchen knives, tools, even the ceremonial fountain pen President Garcia had gifted Chen for signing the historic first agreement. The tension peaked when the handshake's airlock suddenly jammed. Rodriguez instinctively pulled out his multi-tool, which reconfigured into a small plasma cutter. "Weapon," shouted the security team, training their devices on the startled engineer. "It's just a tool," Rodriguez protested, dropping it immediately. Chen stepped between her crew and the Concorde representatives. "Please, there's been a misunderstanding. None of these items were brought as weapons." Xaltiva and the security team conferred in hushed tones. Finally, the first greeter addressed them with noticeably cooler formality. "The diplomatic meeting is postponed pending security evaluation. You will return to your vessel and remain docked until further notice." As they retreated to the handshake, Chen overheard one alien whisper to another in surprisingly clear English. They even weaponized their writing implements. What kind of evolutionary hell spawned such beings? Back aboard their ship, the team sat in stunned silence until Wong finally spoke. "I think we just discovered our first major cultural difference." Chen stared out the viewport at the glittering Concorde station. Somehow, I don't think this is going to make it into the historical archives as the good kind of first contact. Outside, additional Concorde vessels moved into position around the handshake. 3 weeks into what the media dubbed the interstellar timeout, Dr. Marcus Wong found himself elbow-deep in xenobiological data. The handshake remained docked at Concorde Station, effectively quarantined while diplomatic channels sputtered through formal protests and clarifications. "Found anything?" Dr. Okafor asked, setting down a cup of coffee beside his workstation. Wong gestured at his screens. "It's what I'm not finding that's fascinating. No wars. Not a single one. That's impossible. Not for them." Wong pulled up comparative evolutionary charts. "Look at the planetary conditions for all 17 Concorde species. Stable climates, limited predation, abundant resources." Okafor leaned closer. "Paradise worlds." "Exactly. They evolved without our constant survival pressures. Their technology developed for convenience, not defense." Wong tapped another screen. "Their languages have minimal terminology for conflict. No words for ambush or siege. Their architectural history shows no fortifications." A notification flashed on Wong's terminal. A message on the Scientific Exchange channel the Concorde had reluctantly kept open. "Human Wong. Query: why do you create daily tools with harm potential?" Zaltiva, Xenobiology Division. Wong's fingers hovered over the keyboard. After careful consideration, he typed, "First greeter, Zaltiva. We don't see harm potential in these tools. We see multifunctionality. May we discuss directly?" To his surprise, a meeting was arranged within hours. The conference room chosen for their meeting had one transparent wall-facing space and 6 security officers monitoring them. Zaltiva's crystalline eyes regarded Wong with what he hoped was curiosity rather than revulsion. "Your species puzzles the Concorde High Council." Zaltiva began without preamble. "Your technological advancement suggests rational minds, yet you embed harm capacity in everyday objects." Wong considered his response carefully. "May I demonstrate something?" After receiving permission, Wong took out a stylus and held it up. "What do you see?" "A writing implement." "Correct." Wong then quickly demonstrated 6 ways the stylus could be used: as a writing tool, as a hairpin, to press recessed buttons, as a makeshift screwdriver, to puncture packaging, and as a pointer. To humans, objects have possibilities beyond their primary function, Wong explained. "It's not about harm, it's about adaptation." Zaltiva's upper limbs performed a gesture Wong couldn't interpret, yet 3 of those uses could cause injury. "Because we evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill us," Wong said. "Predators, weather extremes, natural disasters, resource scarcity. Humans who saw multiple uses for tools survived." The conversation deepened as Wong shared Earth's evolutionary history. Zaltiva gradually revealed more about Concorde species development on worlds with minimal threats. Hours passed before the alien asked the question that had clearly been troubling it. "You are not the first." Wong felt a chill. "Not the first what?" "Species that sees weapons everywhere." Zaltiva glanced at the guards, then lowered its voice. "The archives mention another. They disappeared 5 centuries ago." Before Wong could ask more, alarms blared. A security officer approached. "Session terminated. The human must return to their vessel." Back aboard the handshake, Wong found the crew gathered around Admiral Okafor, who had just arrived via shuttle with grim news. "The Concorde has voted," she announced. "Earth's solar system is now under quarantine. No ships in or out until they determine if we're a Category 5 civilization hazard." "What's Category 5? Chen asked. "A species too dangerous to join galactic society," Okafor replied. "But that's not all. Long-range probes detected unknown vessels approaching Concorde space from the galactic rim, and they're not responding to hails." Wong thought of Zaltiva's words about a disappeared species. "Admiral, I think there's something the Concorde isn't telling us about those ships. Captain Isabel Reyes killed the engines of the Mockingbird and let her smuggling vessel drift behind the ice moon. The ship's systems powered down to minimal life support, dark, cold, and invisible to the Concorde patrol vessels, enforcing Earth's quarantine. Tell me again why we're risking our necks. Her first mate, Darius, whispered unnecessarily in the darkness. Because someone's paying triple market rate for Earth coffee beans, Reyes replied, watching the sensor readout. And I've got a contact inside Concorde Station willing to look the other way. The Mockingbird had made 3 successful runs through the quarantine zone in as many weeks. Officially, no human vessels could enter or leave the solar system. Unofficially, the black market for Earth goods was booming among curious Concorde species. The patrol ship's energy signature faded as it continued its predictable route. Reyes powered up the engines and prepared to make her jump when the long-range scanner pinged. "That's odd," she muttered, adjusting the controls. Something big just dropped out of FTL at the edge of sensor range. The readout stabilized, showing not one signature but hundreds. No, thousands. Holy hell, Darius breathed. That's not a fleet. That's an invasion. The objects were moving in perfect coordination, like a swarm of insects. As Reyes amplified the scan, the computer flagged a pattern match. Energy signatures similar to fragments recovered from the edge of Concorde space. Fragments that collectors paid handsomely for. "We're changing course," Reyes announced. "You're not thinking." The Concorde needs to see this, and so does Earth. Admiral Sophia Okafor stood before the hastily assembled United Earth Defense Council, the smuggler's sensor logs displayed behind her. "The data is conclusive," she stated. "A massive fleet of unknown origin is cutting through the outer Concorde territories. They've already overrun 3 agricultural worlds." General Santos leaned forward. And the Concorde response? Ineffective. Okafor brought up intercepted Concorde distress calls. Their peacekeeping vessels weren't designed for combat. They're being systematically destroyed. Defense Minister Cheng frowned. "While we may sympathize with the Concorde situation, we remain under quarantine. Their problems are not ours." The room fell silent as Ambassador Chen entered, face drawn. "Their problems have become ours," she said, sliding a data crystal into the table's reader. This message was just delivered by a Concorde courier, directly from their High Council. The hologram showed a Concorde medical ship, its crystalline structure cracked and burning. The vessel was limping toward the Sol system, pursued by 3 smaller ships of unfamiliar design. 2,000 civilians and medical personnel, Chen explained. The only survivors from Gardner Colony. They're requesting emergency sanctuary within our quarantine zone. "This is clearly a trick," Santos objected. "They quarantine us, then expect us to risk our security for them." Okafor studied the tactical display. The pursuing vessels matched the energy signatures from Captain Reyes' scans. She pointed to the trajectory. "At current speed, they'll reach our outer defense grid in 11 hours. If we engage, we violate the quarantine," Cheng warned. "And if we don't," Chen countered, 2,000 beings die while we watch." President Garcia, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. "Admiral Okafor, prepare a response force. Ambassador Chen, inform the Concorde that we will provide humanitarian assistance." She held up a hand to silence objections. "But our vessels will remain armed. Quarantine be damned." On the bridge of the UES Daedalus, Captain Raj Patel watched as the battered Concorde medical ship limped into Earth's defensive perimeter. Behind it, 3 pursuing vessels accelerated. "Weapons status?" he asked. "Ready, sir, but—" Lieutenant Commander Park hesitated. "The lead alien vessel is transmitting. Audio only." A sound filled the bridge. Not language, but a rhythmic clicking interspersed with high-frequency pulses. The translation system struggled before producing. Harvesting rights claimed. Yield the resource vessel. Resistance brings consumption. Patel's expression hardened. Target lead pursuer. Let's show them how humans respond to threats. As the Daedalus moved to intercept, the alien vessels broke formation, revealing capabilities far beyond Concord technology. The battle for humanity's quarantine zone had begun. Evasive pattern Delta, Captain Patel ordered as energy bolts streaked past the Daedalus. The ship lurched sideways, barely avoiding the barrage. Their targeting algorithms are adapting to our movements, Lieutenant Commander Park reported, fingers dancing across the tactical display. The Concord medical ship is safely behind our defensive line, but these harvester vessels aren't backing off. The bridge crew watched as the alien ships executed maneuvers that defied conventional physics, moving with insect-like coordination. "Sir, we've got a problem," Chief Engineer Maya Hernandez called over the comm. "The main weapons array is overheating. 2 more shots, and we risk a coolant breach." Patel slammed his fist on the armrest. The Daedalus had been outfitted with reduced weaponry to comply with quarantine restrictions, a diplomatic concession that now left them vulnerable. "Options, people," he demanded. Science Officer Dr. Amara Osoi looked up from her station. "Captain, the harvesters appear to use a bioelectric communication system. Their ships coordinate too perfectly for individual pilots." "How does that help us?" "Our primary communications array operates on frequencies that might disrupt their bioelectric signals," Osei suggested. "If we reconfigure it to emit a wideband pulse." Patel understood immediately. "We turn our comm system into a weapon." "Do it." While Osei and Hernandez worked on repurposing the communications array, Navigation Officer Lee studied the harvesters' movement patterns. "Sir, I think I can help." Lee pulled up the ship's mining drone controls. "These drones carry solar reflectors for emergency power generation. If I reposition them around that dwarf star." He pointed to a stellar body just half a light minute away. "You're suggesting we weaponize sunlight," Patel said with dawning appreciation. "Exactly. A focused solar array could generate enough energy to blind their sensors. At minimum," Patel finished. "Make it happen." As the crew frantically repurposed systems never designed for combat, the harvester vessels closed in. The lead ship fired again, clipping the Daedalus starboard stabilizer. "Ready with the communications pulse," Osei announced. "Mining drones in position," Lee added. "On my mark," Patel ordered, watching the harvesters form an attack pattern. 3, 2, 1. Execute. The reconfigured communications array discharged a massive electromagnetic pulse, while simultaneously, the mining drones aligned their reflectors, channeling the dwarf star's energy into a concentrated beam. The effect was immediate. The harvester vessels broke formation, their movements becoming erratic. 2 collided, while the third spun aimlessly. "It worked," Park exclaimed. "Their coordination is disrupted." But the celebration was premature. The harvesters quickly began to adapt, their ships realigning into a new formation. "They're learning," Osei warned. "The effect won't last long." Hernandez's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, I've got one more idea. The waste reclamation system stores compacted matter for periodic ejection. If we modify the magnetic containment field." "You want to weaponize our garbage?" Patel asked incredulously. "Our very dense, highly accelerated garbage, sir." Patel grinned. "Do it." Moments later, the Daedalus unleashed a stream of compressed waste material, accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. The improvised projectiles tore through the lead harvester vessel, causing cascading explosions across its biomechanical hull. The remaining harvesters abruptly retreated, jumping to FTL speeds and disappearing from sensors. Aboard Concord Station, the observation deck had fallen completely silent. Dozens of representatives from various species stood transfixed by the tactical display, showing the battle's progression. First Greeter Xaltiva turned to High Minister Zrill. They converted communication equipment into a weapon. They weaponized light itself. They even weaponized waste matter. High Minister Zrill's tentacles coiled tightly against his head. a sign of extreme distress. The quarantine was insufficient. These humans don't build weapons, they are weapons. Dr. Wong, permitted on the observation deck as a cultural liaison, stepped forward. No, Minister, we're survivors. There's a difference. The footage of the dataless battle began spreading across Concord space, eliciting both terror and fascination. The species that had been dismissed as too dangerous to join galactic society had just demonstrated why that assessment might have been correct, and why the Concord might need them anyway. The lunar diplomatic facility, hastily converted from a research outpost, hummed with tension. On one side of the conference table sat the human delegation: Ambassador Chen, Admiral Okafor, Dr. Wong, and Captain Patel. Facing them were 4 Concord representatives, including High Minister Zrill and First Greeter Xaltive. Between them lay a metallic tray containing objects confiscated from the humans upon arrival: styluses, wristwatches, hair clips, and even Ambassador Chen's eyeglasses. These items violate security protocols, stated Zrill, his head tentacles rippling with what Wong had learned indicated agitation. Your delegation arrived with 17 potential weapons. Chen maintained a diplomatic smile. Minister Zrill, we did not bring weapons. These are personal effects. Your timepieces contain microelectronics that could be reprogrammed as detonators, countered the Viduri security chief, a gelatinous being who communicated through color-shifting patterns. Your vision enhancers could focus light into cutting beams. Admiral Okafor, her patience visibly thinning, reached across the table and lifted Zrill's ceremonial staff of office. The Concord security team tensed, appendages hovering over their stun devices. This ceremonial staff, Okafor said calmly, could be used as a bludgeon, a lever, a climbing aid, an electrical conductor, a fluid channel, a measurement tool, or a splint for broken limbs. Should we confiscate it as well? That is a sacred symbol of office, not a weapon. Zrill protested. Exactly our point, Chen interjected smoothly. Context and intent matter. We see multiple uses in objects. That doesn't mean we intend harm. Xaltiva's compound eyes flickered, the Moriki equivalent of thoughtful blinking. Perhaps we should focus on the reason for this summit. The Harvester incursion has claimed 12 Concord worlds in 18 days. Tactical displays activated, showing the advancing Harvester swarm cutting a path through Concord space. Red indicators marked destroyed worlds, while yellow showed those under imminent threat. Our peacekeeping vessels have proven inadequate, admitted Zrill reluctantly. The Concord High Council requests human assistance in developing defensive strategies. You quarantined us as dangerous, Patel observed, and now you want our help because we're dangerous. We request your unique perspective, Xaltiva clarified. Not weapons, knowledge. Wong leaned forward. Before we continue, there's something you're not telling us. He looked directly at Xaltiva. About the species that disappeared 5 centuries ago. The conference room fell silent. Zrill's tentacles coiled tightly against his head. The precedent species, Xaltiva said finally, ignoring Zrill's obvious disapproval. They evolved like you, on a high-threat world. They saw multiple uses in everything, including harm potential. The early Concord refused alliance with them, considering their thinking too volatile. What happened to them? Chen asked. The historical records were largely purged, Xaltiva continued. But archaeological evidence suggests they were the first to encounter the Harvesters. Without allies, they were systematically eradicated. A chime interrupted as an emergency transmission came through. The lunar base's proximity sensors had detected 3 Harvester scout ships approaching Earth. They found us, Okafor stated grimly. The base shuddered as the first impacts struck the outer defensive shields. Warning lights bathed the room in red. Defensive systems failing, reported a technician. Hull breach in Section 7. As the delegates were ushered toward evacuation pods, they passed the base's kitchen. Inside, an elderly human woman was calmly gathering supplies. "Ma'am, "We need to evacuate," called the security officer. Chef Mei Lin, who had been preparing the diplomatic dinner, shook her head. "You go. I'll slow them down." "With what?" Zrill asked incredulously. "Kitchen implements." Lin's weathered face curved into a smile as she assembled an array of ordinary kitchen tools. "Minister on Earth, we have a saying. The difference between a chef's kitchen and an arsenal is largely a matter of imagination." As the evacuation continued, Lin began mixing cleaning compounds in precise measurements, her movements displaying the same precision she used when preparing five-star cuisine. Behind her, Zaltiva hesitated, then stayed to observe what would happen when harvesters met a human armed with nothing but cooking implements. The massive hangar bay of the UES Armstrong bustled with unprecedented activity. 3 weeks after the lunar base incident, now legendary thanks to Chef Lin's successful defense, using kitchen implements and cleaning supplies, Earth had become the unlikely innovation center for the anti-harvester coalition. Admiral Okafor walked alongside High Ministers Zrill and Saltiva, surveying the collaboration that would have been unthinkable a month earlier. "Station 14 is testing food synthesizer modifications," Okafor explained, gesturing to where Engineer Hernandez worked alongside blue-skinned Moriki technicians. By recalibrating the molecular assembly protocols, they can produce adhesive compounds capable of immobilizing harvester biocomponents. "You've turned food production into a weapon," Zrill observed, his tone caught between admiration and horror. "We prefer tactical resource reallocation," Okafor replied with the ghost of a smile. They moved to the next station, where Navigation Officer Lee was demonstrating his solar reflection technology to Vidari scientists. The gelatinous beings shifted through rainbow patterns as Lee explained how ordinary navigational equipment could generate focused energy beams. "Your species approaches technology differently than ours," Zaltiva noted, compound eyes taking in the activity. "Concord engineers design singular-purpose systems optimized for efficiency. Humans design multi-purpose systems optimized for adaptability." "Necessity and evolution," Dr. Wong explained, joining the tour. Earth species that specialized too narrowly often went extinct when conditions changed. A commotion drew their attention to where a young girl, no more than 12, was arguing with a cluster of Concord scientists. "That's Sophia Wu," Wong said, "daughter of our quantum communications specialist." They approached as the girl manipulated a holographic display showing oscillating waveforms. "The harvester ships communicate using overlapping frequency patterns," Sophia explained with the impatient confidence of the young explaining something obvious. "It's just like my science fair project on music visualization." The Concord scientists looked skeptical until Sophia activated her device. The hangar filled with an eerie, beautiful harmony as harvester communication signals were translated into sound. Then, with a few adjustments, she introduced a discordant note that made everyone wince. "See, harmonic disruption," she said triumphantly. "We can jam their coordination by finding the resonant frequency and inverting it." Zrill stared at the child. "Your offspring conceptualize weaponization before maturity." "She's not weaponizing anything," Wong corrected. "She's applying music theory to communication signals. The application matters, not the technology." Across the hangar, the tour was interrupted by Captain Ray's arrival. The smuggler-turned-scout strode from her ship, face grim as she approached Admiral Okafor. "We penetrated deep into harvester-controlled space," Rise reported, activating a portable display. "They're not just a swarm, they're being directed." The display showed a massive structure unlike any harvester vessel seen before, a central hub surrounded by pulsing organic material. "It's coordinating the entire invasion," Rice continued. "And there's something else." She hesitated. "The central chamber contains technology similar to Concord design. Much older, but recognizable." All eyes turned to Zrill, whose tentacles had gone completely still, a sign of extreme shock. "Impossible," the minister whispered. Dr. O.C. joined them, examining the readings. The energy signature is distinctive. This technology appears to be modifying and directing the harvester's natural behavior. Someone weaponized the harvesters, Wong realized aloud. Before anyone could respond, a communication alert sounded. A transmission was being broadcast across all channels, in perfect English. Concord species, we offer mercy. Surrender the weaponizing organisms designated humans for containment, and your worlds will be spared. Their evolutionary path cannot be permitted to spread. You have 48 hours to comply. The hangar fell silent as the implications became clear. The harvesters weren't just an invasion force. They were a weapon themselves, aimed specifically at humanity. Zrill turned to Okafor, his voice subdued. It seems your species isn't the only one that weaponizes everything. The combined human Concord fleet assembled at the edge of the Arcturus system, the last defensible position before the Sol quarantine zone. Aboard the UES Daedalus, now serving as the Alliance flagship, Admiral Okafor surveyed the tactical display with Captain Patel. 96 vessels, Patel noted. 37 human, 59 Concord. Against thousands. Okafor's expression remained impassive. We're not here to match them ship for ship. We're here to sever the head of the snake. The strategic plan was audacious. While the main fleet engaged the Harvester Armada, a strike team led by Captain Rice would infiltrate the massive control hub discovered during their scouting mission. The Mockingbird, with its smuggler's modifications, stood the best chance of slipping through the Harvester defenses. Strike team is aboard and ready, Rise reported over the comm. Though I still think this is suicide. Noted, Captain, Okafor replied. Just get Dr. Wong and Saltiva to that control node. They're the only ones who might make sense of its origins. As the Mockingbird departed, the sensors lit up with approaching harvester signatures. They're here, Patil announced. Battle positions. The space before them seemed to warp as thousands of harvester vessels dropped out of FTL, moving with their characteristic hive mind precision. At the center of the formation loomed the control hub, a massive biomechanical structure pulsing with sickly green energy. All ships, execute planned thermopyle, Okafor ordered. The Alliance fleet formed a spherical defensive formation, bristling with both conventional weapons and the improvised systems developed during the past weeks. Food synthesizers now produced corrosive compounds. Communication arrays had been reconfigured into signal jammers. Even the Concord's medical vessels had adapted their cellular regeneration beams into targeted disruption fields. The Harvesters struck first, their initial assault claiming 3 Concord ships in moments. The Alliance responded with a coordinated barrage that cut through the front line of attackers. But the Harvesters kept coming. They're adapting to our weapons signatures, reported Lieutenant Commander Park. Effectiveness dropping by 18% already. Initiate secondary configurations, Patil ordered. Across the fleet, systems that had already been weaponized were weaponized again, in new and unpredictable ways. Waste management systems ejected superheated plasma instead of compressed matter. Navigation beacons became mines. Even damaged Alliance vessels, rather than retreating, deliberately overloaded their systems to create devastating energy discharges as they went down fighting. On the bridge of the Concord flagship Harmony, Minister Zrill watched in awe and horror. They're using their own destroyed vessels as weapons, he murmured to his aide. Is there anything humans won't weaponize? The battle hung in precarious balance as the Mockingbird slipped through the chaos toward the control hub. Inside the small vessel, Dr. Wong and Saltiva prepared for insertion, while Reyes navigated the hazardous approach. Multiple signatures on intercept, Darius warned from the tactical station. Deploying countermeasures, Reyes replied, activating a system that released hundreds of coffee bean containers, each now packed with reactive compounds that mimicked the Mockingbird's energy signature. As the decoys confused the pursuing harvesters, the Mockingbird reached the massive control hub. Reyes guided the ship into a maintenance access port, the vessel shuddering as it scraped through the too narrow opening. This is as far as we go, she announced, powering down systems. You have 20 minutes to reach the central node and deploy Sophia's disruptor. After that, I'm leaving, with or without you. Wang adjusted the pack containing the young girl's harmonic disruptor technology. Understood. Zaltiva's compound eyes fixed on the strange interior of the hub, a disquieting blend of organic material and ancient technology. I recognize elements of this architecture, the alien scientist admitted. It resembles Concord designs from the first expansion era. You think your ancestors built this? Wang asked as they moved deeper into the structure. No, Zaltiva replied softly. I think the precedent species did, after studying our technology, and I fear we are about to discover why they disappeared. As they approached the central chamber, a sudden realization struck Wang. They weren't just facing an invasion. They were confronting a 500-year-old weapon deployed by a species pushed to desperation by the very alliance they now fought to save. The central chamber of the Harvester control hub pulsed with binaural energy. Dr. Wang and Zaltiva stood before an ancient console where organic tendrils intertwined with technology, clearly built by intelligent hands. This confirms it, Zaltiva said, translating the faded symbols. The precedent species, the Vorn, they didn't just disappear, they transformed. Wang studied the living data displays. They merged with the Harvesters. After the Concord abandoned them, Zaltiva added, compound eyes dimming with shame. The historical archives were purged, but this tells the complete story. The early Concord discovered the Vorn, found their weaponizing perspective disturbing, and refused alliance. When the original Harvesters appeared, then just simple resource-consuming organisms, the Concord quarantined the Vorn and left them to their fate. Instead of being consumed, Wang realized, the Vorn adapted. They merged with their predators, directed their evolution, and turned them into the ultimate weapon. A new voice spoke, not over speakers, but somehow resonating directly in their minds. The Concord feared our potential, just as they fear yours. The chamber shifted as a figure emerged from the walls, partly mechanical, partly organic, with traces of a bipedal form like a grotesque echo of the species it had once been. For 5 centuries, we have evolved, consumed, prepared, and now we return to claim justice against those who abandoned us. Wang activated Sophia's harmonic disruptor, but nothing happened. The hybrid being seemed amused. A clever device. We detected it the moment you boarded. Your young ones think like we once did. Why target Earth? Wang demanded. We had no part in what happened to you. Because you are what we once were. The Concord will use you as weapons when convenient, then discard you when your nature frightens them. We offer an alternative. Join us. Evolve. Your adaptability combined with our collective would be unstoppable. Outside, the battle rage. The Alliance fleet was faltering against the endless Harvester swarm. You're not offering evolution, Wang said. You're offering extinction. Humans don't weaponize to conquer. We adapt to survive. A distinction without difference. The entity dismissed. Your resistance changes nothing. The Concord will fall. You will be contained. Zaltiva suddenly stepped forward. The Concord of 5 centuries ago made an unforgivable mistake, but your vengeance perpetuates that error. You've become what you once feared, a species that sees only weapons. The hybrid being hesitated, and in that moment, Wang noticed something they'd overlooked. The hub's temperature regulation system. With a quick motion, he repurposed Sophia's disruptor, connecting it to the environmental controls. What are you doing? The entity demanded as the chamber temperature began to fluctuate wildly. Improvising, Wang replied. The hybrid screamed as rapid temperature shifts disrupted the delicate balance between its organic and mechanical components. Throughout the hub, systems began to fail as the environmental cascade spread. We need to go, Wang told Zaltiva. I've weaponized their life support system against them. As they raced back toward the Mockingbird, the entire structure began to convulse. Aboard the Daedalus, Admiral Okafor watched in astonishment as the Harvester control hub began to self-destruct. Across the battlefield, Harvester vessels suddenly lost coordination, their movements becoming erratic. "The Mockingbird is clear," reported Lieutenant Commander Park. "They're requesting immediate retrieval." Hours later, in the aftermath of victory, representatives from all 18 species, 17 Concord members and humanity, gathered on the observation deck of Concord Station. The quarantine of Earth had been officially lifted. High Minister Zerl addressed the assembly. "Today marks a new chapter in Concord history. We acknowledge our past failures and embrace a future where diversity of perspective strengthens us all." Ambassador Chen signed the formal alliance treaty, making Earth the 18th member of the Galactic Concord, with special provisions acknowledging humanity's unique defensive capabilities. As the ceremony concluded, Chef Mei Lin approached Dr. Wang and Saltiva, carrying a tray of carefully prepared delicacies combining Earth and Concord ingredients. "The perfect metaphor," Wang observed, accepting a morsel. "Our cultures, like these ingredients, are stronger in combination. Yet we must remember the lesson of the Vorn," Zaltiva added quietly. "The ability to see weapons in everything is both gift and burden." Lin smiled, deftly spinning her serving knife in a maneuver that could have been either culinary flourish or combat technique. The knife that cuts the bread can also cut the hand. The difference lies not in the tool, but in the heart that wields it. From a quarantined laboratory deep within Concord Station, a single harvester cell pulsed with dormant life, waiting. The story of species that weaponized everything was far from over.